morning, mother effers. Offers. Alright guys, getting started a little bit early today. Normally I would be warming up and setting everything up, but I think I've got it down pat. So maybe we'll put in a few more minutes of riding than we normally do. Just trying to get everything set up. As you see there in the message, if you decide to follow along today, please send a message on whatever platform you're on. So if you're on Twitch, YouTube Live, or if you're on the old Facebook, just say hi. I would appreciate it. Of course, there is always a little bit of fiddling around when I get started, so you guys are going to have to watch some of that as we go. Oh, and just realize there is a little bit of a delay no matter which platform you happen to be on. So I actually have a couple different devices here at the bike. One, I'm watching the Zwift companion app, which is connected here to the game. And then the other one, I have Facebook Live going. And the rest of the stream I can see actually on my two different monitors. So one of the struggles that I had setting everything up for quite a while was the webcam would continuously freeze up. And I'm using an older Canon Vixia HFR 400. And the settings issue that I was having, I finally discovered were within the Elgato CamLink software. That was where the issues were coming from. And so changing a few settings there seems to have worked, but I guess we'll find out today. Friday the ride we had, there was no glitches. So hopefully we'll continue on that and not have any issues here today. We are riding here on Zwift, and I believe this is Richmond, which I've never ridden before. This is the flat route, so it only has maybe 15 feet of elevation, so very flat route. And again, you know, as I get my body used to doing this, I'm just not at a point where I want to do a lot of hill riding. The goal is to just get an hour of riding in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and share that with you guys. So eventually, as I get into better condition, we'll be doing more rides. You know, and it is starting to warm up here. It's becoming springtime here in Michigan, and I'll be riding outside, and of course we won't be sharing that on, you know, the live channel, but I'll try to get as much content as I can, or video, so that I can share that with you guys. My goal isn't to only do this Zwift app as a form of losing weight over the next several months. I do want to do other things. You'll notice up there I have the pick of the day, and that was yesterday. I went on my first hike of 2019. I happen to live inside of the state game area here in Lapeer, Michigan, and so I have about a 4-mile loop that I can go out and hit anytime I want. There's a couple other loops. There's about 7 miles of trails if you know where you're going, so you can actually hit 7 miles if you'd like, but there's a just over 2-mile loop and a nearly 4-mile loop that are pretty well defined and cleared out. So I don't have much of an excuse because I can literally walk right out the door and do that. But for whatever reason this year, it's taken me until the middle of March to actually go out and hike. And I've got a set of snowshoes. I like to do that, but this year I don't know what it was, man. I just didn't feel like it. I don't know if it was because it was as cold as it was, or because the snow wasn't exactly ideal. It really doesn't matter why. All of those reasons are basically excuses. I just didn't want to do it. Wasn't motivated to get out there. And so part of that was the fact that I was shutting down my business. I owned an insurance agency only for a couple of years. It just didn't work out for me. And so that took up a lot of my time. You know, getting my taxes done was kind of a pain in the ass this year because of that shutting down. And I got that, primarily got all that monkey off my back. I got all the, I've got all the data ready. You know, I scrub all of my transactions to make sure they're categorized properly. And so I go line by line of every transaction I make. And most people don't do that, but I've done that. Man, I've done that for well over 10 years. Because I want to make sure I've got everything categorized properly. And so I go through every line and make sure, both personal and business. And so I'm starting to use some different software. Hopefully I won't have to do that in the future. And I won't have the same problem of having the LLC issue, even though I still have a home-based business that I work with. But I digress. There's that word again. Anyways, like I said, I wanted to get started earlier today because, hell, everything started up perfect. I didn't have to put a lot of fidgeting together. And I didn't have to fidget around too much. Felt pretty good waking up. And said, F it, let's just go. Maybe I'll do an hour and a half. Or whatever time is allowed. So, good morning, Mother Ophers. I did cut some videos yesterday of my hike. And a lot of that was just more testing was the goal. So the goal for my testing is that I'm trying to figure out what the best setup is for doing video on the fly without getting too crazy. And so that the videos that I did, and even that picture that's on the screen, is from a new phone that I've got, which is a Motorola One X4. And so I've been an Apple products person for years, since 2012, and I've been transitioning away from Apple. And so I'm pretty impressed with this phone. It literally only cost me $150, so I was prepared to spend over $1,000 on a new Apple product, and for $150 I've got the equivalent, I believe, of what they offer. So it has a 4K camera on the front, dual cameras. It has a 1080p 30 frame per second camera on the selfie side, which is what I used most of the time. And so I did my filming on that. I'll tell you, what I was surprised with was the battery. If I was to use my iPhone to do the same filming, it would have died, literally would have died halfway through the route. Even, you know, I do have an external battery pack that I use on my iPhone, but if I forget to turn it on, it would have just died, which it actually ended up doing. So I use my iPhone just for the GPS side of it, to track my my fitness app, which tracks my hike. Of course, it uses the GPS to do that. And as I was walking in the house, it died. So I was able to catch it and still capture the data for the hike. But I was super surprised. I videoed a lot. I don't know how many minutes, but a lot of video yesterday and pictures with this Motorola phone, and it still had over 30% left on it. I think it was in the 40% when I got back. And of course, it was pretty cold yesterday, and that doesn't help your battery. So I was very impressed with the phone. Matter of fact, I brought it out here today. It's on a case, but for $150, I mean, come on. Even if it was the same quality of my old phone, my iPhone, I'd have been happy, but it's better. No, hands down, it's better. I used to make fun of all my friends that had Androids phones. I used to say ghetto, you know, they had their ghetto phone, so now I have my own ghetto phone. But I've been impressed with it so far. Now, the service I'm switching over to, and I've talked about this a little bit before, is I am switching over to this new Google phone service, which is called Google Fi, previously known as Project Fi. And the reason I'm doing that is because it makes sense for me. It may not make sense for everybody because of the networks it uses, but the networks that Google Fi uses is Sprint, so Sprint towers, T-Mobile towers, and US Cellular towers. Now, US Cellular here in Michigan is pointless. They don't exist. And so that would only come into play in certain cities around the United States for me, that would make sense. And I believe that they may have some global connections. It might be the reason that Google's associated with them. But what's interesting, and it also uses Wi-Fi, so that's part of it. So what's interesting is that as long as you have an appropriate phone, so one that they say works, so any of the Pixel phones, some of the Motorola phones, some LG phones, you just have to see if what's compatible. They will automatically switch to whatever tower is the best quality for you, and so without you doing anything. So as you're traveling, if T-Mobile tower happens to be the best signal, then that's what it'll be on. And of course, if your Wi-Fi signal happens to be the best signal, it will switch to that. And it's said to switch seamlessly so that you don't even actually notice it, which is, for me, the biggest draw to the phone, because where I live, the towers just don't quite reach at my house, and so I'm usually on the edge with Sprint to having 1 or 2 bars at the most, and then dropping out. So if somebody called me on my cell phone, I would lose a signal almost immediately, or it would be breaking up. And so this is going to give me the opportunity to have one phone number as opposed to the multiple phone numbers that I've had in the past. Currently, right now, the way that I get around, hey, good morning, Tina. The way that I get on with my phone services is that I currently have my Virgin Mobile or Sprint Towers phone, and then I have, I'm drawing a blank. Then I have my, whatever, I have an internet phone. And so it's a different phone number. So my friends and family, when they're trying to get a hold of me, they've got to go through this multiple phone calling thing where they have to figure out where I'm at. And even at work, it's a whole different phone number. So they have to first try my cell phone, then they may try my home phone, then they may try my work phone, and you know, it's a pain in the ass for everybody. And so by going over to this Google Fi setup, I'll be able to just keep my one phone number, and that's the only phone number anybody's got to worry about calling me, which would be great for everybody else. So I'm excited to try it out. I've got until I think April 12th before I have to cancel my Virgin Mobile phone. So I'm running both of them while I test out the Google Fi setup. And you know, I hope that over the next couple of weeks I'm satisfied with the Google setup and I'm able to just make the full switch. But if we don't, if it doesn't work, I'll let you guys know, you know, my positives and negatives with it. One of the problems, if you are looking to switch and you're not with a main carrier currently, you may run into the same problem that I have. So that problem for me was I wanted to transfer my current phone number over, was my original intent. So when I signed up, that's how I signed up, was with a phone transfer. So there's one piece of that you need to know, which is you have to have your account number and your PIN number. So if you don't have an account number, then you have to figure out how to get that. Well, I won't speak for other carriers, or if they even have this issue. I would assume Boost and some of the other ones do. You don't have an account number on when you log in, so you have to contact their customer service. In my case, for Virgin Mobile, I was on the phone for multiple different sessions for a long period of time, like an hour. And when we got down to them giving me my account number, which they didn't want to do, they wanted to know everything I was doing and why I needed it, they would hang up on me. They'd say, okay, wait, we're going to transfer you to the right person, and then hang up. So I decided, well, screw it. I'm just going to go ahead and get a different phone number from Google. And that's where the problem started. Because I had started with the idea that I was going to transfer a number, Google didn't know how to handle stopping that process and issuing me a new number. So we're going on about a week now, close to a week of dealing with that. And I still can't use the voice and or text part of this new phone. So we actually have the service on hold until they issue the new phone number, and they've escalated the issue up the ladder to somebody that actually knows what the F they're doing. So this isn't like all butterflies and rainbows switching over, but it is partially my fault. So if you choose to do it, it's my fault without knowing it was going to be my fault. But if you choose to do it and you're on Virgin Mobile and probably Boost, just know that you're going to have some problems. You may want to start the process of getting that account number first before you choose to switch, or you may just want to change your phone number altogether and just do that right off the bat. So, but the idea is perfect. And so when it comes to cost, people jump into that. So here in the United States, Xfinity or Comcast and Charter or Spectrum, they both have two different names each. They've went to this new phone system where you can get a phone through your cable provider. And both of those systems here in the United States are agreements with Verizon. So you'll be using Verizon towers. And I believe it's about $14 a gig, so pay as you go. So I don't know the full cost, but I know it's $45, and then there's some kind of pay as you go. So I apologize, I don't know the details, but if you choose to use that service, probably save you a little bit of money, but you'll be on Verizon towers. And so if that's the right setup for you, then look into that if you already have, you know, Comcast and or Charter as a cable or internet provider, which is a requirement. And if you've already had experience with that, then please chime in and let us know how that works for you. But for me, Verizon towers don't work here, so I didn't look at it very closely. But that's another option as opposed to being with Verizon directly. And there's some savings. Now, nobody's gonna kid me into thinking that you are getting throttled down by Verizon towers if you're on the Comcast or Xfinity service or Charter service, Spectrum, whichever one you call it. You won't have priority. And if that matters to you, you may not want to jump in. For instance, even with Virgin Mobile, who uses Sprint towers, you're supposed to be able to have a hotspot available, and you can pay a little extra to have that. It never worked. I only had that service for 2 months, and it never ever worked. I never had a Wi-Fi signal for my, you know, when my kids were in the car with me and they wanted to use their devices. It never worked. So nobody will admit it, but I believe that's because the towers are throttled down for anybody beyond that isn't a direct Sprint customer. And so I believe the same thing is true for all of the carriers that do a similar type program. So anyways, I chose to go to Google Fi as a test. And of course, I'll share all that with you as I decide whether it works or doesn't work. But it's an interesting concept. So getting into the cost of Google Fi, you need to buy a phone that's compatible. The cheapest phone, if you're to buy a new one, on the Google site is $99, and I think that's a Motorola G6, which is good enough phone. I chose to go up to the $149 Motorola Android One X4. All the nomenclature. So I tried to go to that phone, and just because it had more features for only $50 more, significantly more. So you have the 4K dual camera, front-facing camera, and a 1080p 30 frames per second selfie camera. And that's you know, those names confuse some people when they'll say front-facing camera, and a lot of people, if you're dyslexic like I am, think that means the camera that's looking at you. That's usually considered the rear camera or the selfie camera. So your front-facing camera is the one that's on the back side of your phone, and that you would use taking pictures of everything but you. And so that's a 4K dual camera. The dual cameras have a zoom camera and a wide angle camera. So, you know, that's one of the selling points of, let's say, the Pixel 3, or I think even the Pixel 2, is that it had this great wide camera mode. Well, these cameras have it also. So it's in the software for the selfie camera, and of course in the hardware for the front-facing camera, or the 4K. So they've been great. I'm actually super impressed with battery life, with the camera itself, the operating system itself. Now the phone itself comes with a 64 gigabyte inside memory. You can't get more. However, it has a micro SD slot. And so that micro SD slot allows you to put whatever size micro SD that you want in there. Now I currently don't have one in there, and I'll tell you why that's not that big a deal. But later on today I'll actually have a 256 gig micro SD card that's coming in from Amazon that I'll be putting in. So I'll have over 300 gig of storage on this phone for $200. That's all I will have invested in the phone itself, and that's amazing compared to other companies. But the reason that even 64 gigs is okay is because when you're signed up with Google, your Google Drive will automatically download your pictures and videos that you take automatically to that drive. And so you can take the pictures right off of the phone hard drive, get rid of them, because they're already automatically saved to the Google Drive. Now, I warn you that you need to make sure the transfers happen. If you have the phone set up like I do, you have to be in a Wi-Fi connection for that transfer to occur. So don't automatically assume that the data is being transferred immediately, because it probably isn't if you're trying to keep your data usage down, which I suggest, by the way. But the fact is, you don't have to really worry about, you know, doing anything but using apps as far as taking up space on your phone. Your rest of your documents can be held in that Google Drive. Now, I will soon be turning that automatic download feature off as I talk about it, because there is a small issue that I've had in the past with the Google Drive, which is that taking your video and photos over there and then trying to transfer that information over to your video editor seems like it loses, it just doesn't work well. Let's just put it that way. Without getting technical, why? It just doesn't work proper. And so I plan to, or not plan, I also have my OneDrive connected, and Dropbox works great too if you want to pay for that. So either a OneDrive or a Dropbox service makes a lot of sense, and you don't lose anything when that happens. And your OneDrive will do exactly the same thing, or your Dropbox will do the exact same thing, where it automatically takes your video and pictures and documents, if you set it up properly, off of your phone basically. So to get into the differences between OneDrive and Dropbox, you know, to each their own when it comes to storage. I don't think it really makes a huge difference which one you use. However, at pretty much the same cost of Dropbox, you can get Office 365 for personal use, not business use. It's a little different, but for personal use at about the same cost. And now you have all of the primary Office products also. So you have Microsoft Word, Excel, and whatnot. I can't remember exactly the rest of them, but you have all of those. What's up, Craig? So, oh man, I appreciate you being here, bud. So anyway, so going with the, I think OneDrive, when you look at the two differences, if you need extra storage, it works. Now, a lot of the professional videographers would cringe at the idea of using OneDrive as your storage device as opposed to going with an external hard drive, but because you will lose some, and it does take a lot of time, and there's some things that there's a lot of time when it comes to data transfer. For somebody like me, it works perfectly fine. But what it doesn't do, there's a small issue. If you're using some of your video editing software, such as DaVinci Resolve 15, you can't set up you can't use your OneDrive. You would think you could, but you can't use your OneDrive as something that you can boot off of from whatever computer. And so that is a bit frustrating, but there's several other video editing softwares out there that are fully web-based, and the information stays, you know, out in their cloud, so you're able to work from them. The downside is it's slower because it's working from a cloud instead of a hard drive. So that's a consideration some people have to make. But if you're just a small hobbyist making quick videos, It's not a big concern. So Adobe has a fast version of their video editing software. I think it's like $10 a month. WeVideo has a really good program that, to get what you probably want to use it for, you're probably going to spend $19 a month, and that starts pushing the limits of anybody's budget as a hobbyist. And there's several other video editing software programs out there. For the most part, once you learn how to use one, you get the basic concepts of how to use all. So, but I will tell you that figuring out how to use just one of them is probably the best idea. Now, if you don't need to use it on multiple devices and you're only going to edit on, let's say, one device, then I would say learn DaVinci Resolve. It is by far the best video editing software that is free, doesn't cost you anything, and it is the same software that many movie producers and TV producers use. It's by a company called Blackmagic, and Blackmagic, their niche is high-end hardware, you know, for TV and movies, and so they make cameras, video editing decks, and they also have one of the best video editing softwares for those products, and they offer that for free to anybody that wants to download it. And you can also get a paid version that's not that expensive. It offers a few more features, especially if you have other people involved with you. So if you have other sorry, I need to power up here. In the game, there behind the nose copyright sounds, there's actually some things you're not seeing. But so anyway, so they offer a few more features if you have other people that are helping you with your video editing. And so that paid feature, I believe, is around $250, somewhere in there, and it gives you an SQL database that multiple editors can use, but it still has to be in network, which means your partners need to be in your same home or office. And so for most of you, that won't matter. I'd say one of the biggest challenges in video editing is just figuring out what software is going to be best for you. And that's a consideration most people don't want to have to deal with. And so I would suggest, I'm trying to think of something to recommend here. If you're okay with spending the money and you really want to make quality videos with, you know, good overlays and some music already there, so that's a challenge for most of you. Some images and things that you can use that are not copyrighted. I would say right now, probably WeVideo is probably the best option. If you go with the free version, they're going to have a watermark on it, so it's going to say WeVideo, which for some of you, you don't care. For most of you, you care, so you're going to spend anywhere from $10 to $20 to get that watermark off. If you're okay with the price and you think you're going to be doing at least one video per month, that $20 is worth it. If you're going to do more than one video a month, it'll also pay for itself. Because when you start going out and purchasing no copyright images, and hey, good morning, bud. When you start grasping or paying for other images, the music, the no copyright music that you need to use, all of the different things that you aren't even thinking of right now, you know, for $19.99 or whatever the price is with WeVideo, well worth it. You can do green screens, which if you didn't realize, that's what's behind me right now. It's a green screen, and that's why it looks like I'm sitting inside the game, sort of. But so WeVideo is a good choice. There are some other, oh, I can't remember the name of it. It's Cyber something. That is a let's say that you only have an Android device, so a tablet or a phone, then there is a, what is it called? Power something by Cyber something. There is another option for you guys that you can actually do video editing right on your phone itself. And so that, and again, it's very similar editing style. So once you learn how to do that, but you can do it right on your phone or your tablet. Had to kill the glasses there. I was getting too much sweat in the eyeballs. The old sleep headband is not working. I am dripping. Now, I make this mistake all the effing time, but I did not turn the temperature down last night. So when I woke up this morning, it was 67 degrees inside of my riding room, and that's a little bit too much. I like it to be around 60 degrees in here before I ride. And so got some extra sweatage, which by the way I need because I effed it up again this weekend. So I was all proud, super proud after my ride on Friday, and I posted out there that I was down to, I think 206 or I'm sorry, 306 or 307 pounds. I'd lost about four pounds or so Friday from Wednesday's weigh-in, not just Friday's ride. And so when I weighed myself in, I was pretty happy that I'd lost some weight. And I may have celebrated too much because I made some poor food choices again. And Friday night, I think I grocery shopped Friday night and bought some sugar-free cookies and ate almost all of them, and bought some sugar-free ice cream, and by Sunday it was all gone. So still sabotaging myself, man. I mean, part of my hike was to try to, yesterday when I went hiking, I was like, man, I gotta do something, and I don't want to ride. So I went out, and it was about, I thought it was 30 degrees, but I think it was around 37 degrees yesterday, Fahrenheit. And so I went for a hike, almost 4 miles, just to try to combat my very poor choices. And this morning when I weighed in, I was 310 pounds again, so I gained all of that weight back that I had lost over the couple of days last week. So fuck, it is what it is, man. I gotta stop doing it to myself. But it isn't the fault of any diet that I'm following. It isn't the fault of the exercise that I'm doing. It's just my own bad choices. So that's just part of the battle that all of you are fighting too. I know I'm not unique. The difference between 2019 and 2012 is that I'm sharing the entire journey with you, not just the positive results. In 2012, I only shared when I won, when I lost a pound. If I didn't gain any weight, that was a win. And I think I pretty much always lost at least a pound every week in that 8-month period of time. But the days in between, you didn't see. You didn't see when I struggled on the bike or when I struggled exercising. You didn't see the days that I gained 4 pounds because of a bad choice. And I wasn't doing it purposely, but I realized how damaging that was for so many people, for them not to see the failures that I had back then. And so this time I promised, as I shared my journey publicly, that I would also share all of my downfalls, as embarrassing as some of them are. So when I gain weight a day or two or in a week, you get to see it. It isn't going to be just the Dave's Great show. It's going to be, and it has been, here is full reality. And so as you see me succeed by January of 2012, because I will, ain't no fucking doubt about it, I'm going to succeed. I will be down to 244 pounds by January of 2020. Well, when you see that happen, you're going to know that it wasn't all rainbows and butterflies. There was a challenge there. There were a lot of valleys, a lot of downtime. There's a lot of negative. There's a lot of struggle. You'll see it all. And that's just the hope that you guys are able to realize that it doesn't matter that you have some setbacks or that you make mistakes. What matters is that you just keep going. You just keep pushing forward. You just keep fighting the fight. For me, the fight is overeating, and in some cases eating the wrong things and not being able to control that. You know, not saying no to donuts when they come around the office. You know, and I do have some good friends that will try to help me at times, but the little rebel in me says F you, and I take a donut anyways. And so that's all on me. But that's part of the reality, the part of the struggle that you guys will go through. And then there's physiological issues too that everybody has. So if you follow any kind of weight loss, you know, reality shows and things like that, you'll see things like, you know, the second week where, you know, the first week you've lost, let's say 10 pounds, and the second week you gain it all back. It's normal. Your body fights it. Your body will fight your transformation. It might be the first month you do great and the second month you do terrible. And by the way, results are relative. So for somebody like me, where I'm carrying so much fat, losing 10 pounds for somebody like me is not the same as somebody who only has 20 or 30 pounds to lose, period. You know, the equivalent for them might be losing 2 pounds. You know, losing 2 pounds might be just as hard or easy, however you want to look at it, depending on where you're at. Losing 2 pounds might take just as long as losing 10 pounds for me. And so you can't compare yourself to others when it comes to, let's say, total poundage of total weight loss, because you're not the same. You don't have the same physiological issues. You don't have the same internal physiological issues. For me, I have high cholesterol, higher elevated blood sugar, higher blood pressure, and all of those are fighting against what I'm trying to accomplish here on weight loss. I'm currently on medication for all of those things, and I can actually get off of the medication eventually, and I would suspect when I get close to my goal of 244 pounds that I'll either be on a very reduced amount of medication or possibly off it completely. That was the case back in 2012. I didn't have to be on any medication. The mistake I made back then was that I didn't continue to go every 6 months and monitor my blood levels. And so as things started to elevate back up, it took until January 2018 to discover that I was at a dangerous level on blood sugar, cholesterol, and blood pressure. You do lose your mind a little bit when you're riding and trying to talk. So that was the biggest mistake I made. You know, they always talk about, you know, when you're looking at different diets and you're looking at different things to get with your physician. So, and we make excuses of why we don't have to, but I'm going to tell you that you really should. And why you should is because you need to get those blood levels checked at least once a year, probably more than that when you're losing a lot of weight or you're changing your daily routines. And let those numbers help your physician help you either be on the right medication or modify the medication that you're on. Where people use an excuse for physicians, which is justified, is when your physician starts recommending diets. And you know, if you're like me and you got a little roly-poly fat guy physician that doesn't know too damn things about health, and I was pre-med, so I know a little bit about the schooling they go through. They don't have really any nutritional training to get their doctorate degree. It's not a requirement. In most cases, your little nobody certificate holder trainer has more education in nutrition than your doctor. So it's easy to disregard your doctor when it comes to their nutritional suggestions. Most of the time you just notice they just give you a sheet from some other place anyways, what they think you should follow, but you know they don't do it because, like mine, he's a little fat rolly guy. Health and wellness is not a priority to him. But what they do, what they can provide for you, and why you should go to them, is getting that blood work done so that you can be on the right medication as long as you need it. And then your goal should be, like myself, is to get yourself healthy enough to where you don't have to use as much medication or any. And I'm down with somebody that thinks that they have to, they can do it in a holistic, natural way. There are plenty of, witch doctor chiropractors that have amazing results with their patients with a much more natural way of doing things, but still go through and get the blood work done. Don't just take the witch doctor's word for it. Be safe. As long as you have all the information and you can do some of your own research, you'll know if you're doing the right or wrong things. In my case, I'm with the fat roly-poly guy doing my blood work and keeping an eye on everything. I am using medication to help control blood sugar, cholesterol, and blood pressure, but I expect that I won't have to do that once I get myself down to a BMI of 35 or less, which for me is 244 pounds or less. Now I don't know what that converts to in kilograms, and so that's why we have the ticker below to share that information with you, because why would I ever learn the metric system? Why would that be important? I've only lived all over the damn world where that's all they use. Why would I know how it works? I am a strange creature, my friends. I've lived in Venezuela, Mexico, Colombia, Thailand, a couple of months in Australia, and everybody uses a metric system. And who doesn't know it? This guy. It's one negative thing of these smartphones is you don't have to know anything. You just type it in. You can hey whatever you want. Hey, I'm not going to do it because my phones will go off if I say it. So, but you can ask your phones pretty much every question you want, and you will get the conversion or the answer without having to ever memorize it. It's just like with phone numbers and addresses. None of us know that shit anymore. Just type it in. You don't have to know. You don't have to remember anything. If you ask somebody what their friend's address was, they can't tell you. Hell, half the people, if you ask them what their own personal phone number is, they don't even know that. They got to call themselves somehow. If somebody tell them what their phone number is, because these smartphones have taken away that. And I feel bad for our kids, for the young people that are using this technology, because there's a certain part of their brain that is no longer used. And so they don't have to worry about remembering things that are important. It's part of why their views are so skewed, because the technology we have now is just turned into mush buckets. I can say that because I'm pretty sure there isn't a single kid out there watching this old as F channel. And if you are, try to be different, man. If you're a kid watching this right now, stop following everybody. Challenge everything. You see an idealism, try to dig into why. Why do people think that way? Just dig into it, man. Don't just accept it as is. Don't accept the words. Try to dig deeper into why it exists. Here in the United States, I'm not going to get into this too much, but here in the United States, when you're talking about policy changes, you know, get to know our Constitution and dig into why we have the laws inside of our Constitution as they are. Try to understand the intent of the founders. Don't just say that there needs to be better gun control laws. Understand why we even have the freedom, the Second Amendment. Understand it. Understand what the purpose was and why it was written into law. Why it is a constitutional right. And we're in such a dangerous point in this world right now that I think understanding, questioning every idealism that is pushed upon you, you need to look back and know why is it a problem without the surface issue and why the laws exist the way that they do. I'm not saying there aren't bad laws. There's been some bad laws. You know, segregation was a terrible law. So fixing that made sense. Women's right to vote was a terrible issue where they didn't have that right to vote. You know, that is something that I agree with, but there are other foundational reasons why our country has the Constitution that it has. And so don't just say F it to all. It's not pure anarchy. We don't need to change the world, the Constitution, 100%. So dig into why laws exist first, and then make up your own mind whether or not they need to change. That's enough of my political rant. Probably lost a few of you there, didn't I? Which is cool. I don't care. So what's interesting, I shouldn't keep going down this political thing, but I will just talk about myself a little bit. When I was a youth, and I think it's a natural progression for most people, even if they won't admit it, if you have an openness to yourself, I think that you'll find that you're probably the same. But when I was younger, I would think that my idealism was very left, democratic in some ways. Though I didn't identify with any party, I always wanted to be an independent. Sounded better, even without really fully understanding what it meant. But as I grew older, I tended to find myself to the right. And I think that is natural. You know, when you're younger and don't know much, I mean, everything sounds, yeah, I mean, I want everybody to have health care. I want everybody to have the education opportunities. I want everybody to have, you know, what's good for one is good for all. But as you grow older, you start to understand the dangers in that idealism. And so I think it's natural as you grow older to think more to the right, and hopefully moderately right, because there should be no absolutes. I don't believe in a free society, so everybody should fall in the middle somewhere. Extremism on both ends is dangerous, whether it's to the left or to the right. I think that you have to realize, if you are a far leftist or you are somebody who's far to the right, just realize that any discussion that you have, the anger that you may feel towards the other side is the same anger they feel towards you. And to argue with somebody that is so far from your personal ideals is mute. It doesn't mean anything. You're not going to change them. You're not going to convince them that your way of thinking is correct. And nor are they going to change your idealism. Matter of fact, they will strengthen it through arguments. So just realize, if you are so far off on the argument, that you're really wasting your time having the conversation. The other part of that is some of the faults, the ignorance, let's put it that way. Most of us are very ignorant when it comes to the issues. And so to get into an argument with anybody that feels like they have a little more knowledge than you do is also going to be a losing battle, because you may have your feelings through a more philosophical or idealism point of view, but you don't have any real facts to back it up. And so you're gonna look pretty stupid when you start having that conversation. Just my 2 cents for all the people that feel like sharing your views on social media is important. You kind of look dumb when you do it. And then if you engage in an argument, you're going to lose, no matter how right you may be. And so I think the best thing you can do is have a beer with your friend and just be friends and keep the BS out of it. Then we can all agree that having a beer is pretty neutral ground. Or if you're not into beer, just a coffee or whatever my cousin told me to drink yesterday. I asked him I asked the world if I had permission to have a drink after my hike. And my buddy Todd said if I would have went 1.01 whatever miles, I could have got one, but I think he conceded that I did enough and said I could still have one. So, oh, by the way, I bring Todd up because he's watching now on Facebook. Or at least he was for a second or two. So if you guys want to know, is there a difference between 60 degrees and 65 degrees when you're riding and the amount of sweat that you produce? The answer is yep. It is 65 degrees in here right now and I am sweating up a storm. Now normally I only ride for an hour. We're at 56 minutes now, but I got started early today, and so I plan on riding longer. I may take a few more breaks during it, but I'm gonna ride close to up to 8 o'clock Eastern time. So whatever that ends up being. Now the trainer won't tick along on the time unless I'm pedaling, so obviously I will have been on the bike longer than whatever the time is saying up there, because when I stop pedaling, it stops recording, which is fair. You can set up when you're outdoor riding too. By the way, you can set up your, if you use MapMyFitness. I'm not sure about the other apps, Strava and them, but I'm sure they're the same. But you can set them up to automatically pause your time when you stop moving, so that you're only counting your actual effort. On MapMyFitness, I don't think it works very well, so I don't have that set up that way. I try to manually pause if I have to get off the bike and rest when I'm outside riding. I don't always remember to do that, and I also don't always remember to turn it back on. So it is a bit flawed. I'm sure if I invested in some of the head units from Garmin, yeah, I said head unit. If you invest in one of the head units from, let's say, Garmin or Wahoo or some of the other brands out there, they may work a little better when it comes to auto stop, because they will be using your speed sensors and your cadence sensors or power sensors that are also on your bike, not just the GPS signal, like the fitness app or why MapMyFitness does. So those might work better, but that's not an investment I've made yet. I'm just using a couple of old iPhones to manage the ride. Even when I'm outside, I do have an external bar attached to my handlebars that I put all my fun little devices on, which works fine for indoor riding. Outside, not so much. So, but those are pretty significant investments if you start getting into some of those products, some of those different head units. You can get some basic ones pretty cheap that just monitor everything, but if you're looking for a mapping function, they're not cheap at all. And so instead of spending a little money, I'd rather spend a lot of money and get the right equipment when I feel like it makes sense, which isn't yet. Well, there is no question that I will have lost a significant amount of water weight today as opposed to other rides, because this is a non-stop thing. Woo! Matter of fact, I have soaked the headband. So it's time for the chrome dome to come out. And we're going to drop the old headband. I feel naked. Look, I got a light right above my head, and I look angelic, wouldn't you say? No, probably not. Probably still see the horns popping out. So that kind of reminds me of the fact that if you look at one of the problems, I'm going to ramble for a minute. One of the problems with high definition film, whether it be video and or just your still pictures, is that you can see all the flaws. So if you don't feel like shaving for the day, like I often do, when you start filming yourself in HD or 4K, it is ridiculously apparent, and you can see every little flaw, and that sucks, man. I've made a few videos where I didn't shave, and when I'm working on the editing, it's junk because I've got to throw them out. It looks it's distracting for me, and I'm sure for anybody else looking. Even in that pic of the day, which is me hiking yesterday, you know, I didn't shave Saturday or Sunday, and it's pretty gross. And by the way, if you guys didn't notice, I don't have the goatee right now, or even the mustache that I was rocking when I first started this journey. And the goatee, when you see guys, especially overweight guys, goatees are very, very popular for good reason. They cover up the double chin. The problem is, it's just like wearing stretchy pants after you've lost some weight. When you start to regain that weight, you don't even realize you're regaining it if you don't use the scale, because the stretchy pants are forgiving. Well, it's the same thing with your goatee. A lot of the fat guys like me have goatees to hide the fatness in their face, and if you rock that goatee for years, you may not realize how fat you are because it hides it even from you, unless you're taking pictures of yourself, which I wasn't doing before I got back on this journey. And so when I accidentally shaved the goatee, I was just trying to trim it up and get it looking presentable. I went too far and said, F it, I might as well shave it off. And then it was like, holy shit, look how fat my face is. And it's reality, but man, oh man, is it embarrassing. And of course, then to share it with the world, and you can't hide it. Even though when we're on a straight camera angle, it's not as noticeable in these rides as it is in any of the other pictures. And of course, I'm no different than most people. So far, I'm not gonna take unflattering pictures and post them. So you're not gonna get a side view unless I'm only trying to make a point of how fat I am, which I haven't been willing to do yet. But the reality is, the goatee hides a lot of how fat your face has gotten. And so if you accidentally shave it off, you're not gonna like it. You're not gonna like it at all. Which again, kind of rambling on, reminds me of, I don't know, probably 15 years ago or so. And my wife at the time I stopped. If she's watching, she'd remember this. We're friends, by the way. So her name's Edna, and I in the most serious tone that I could, I was like, "Hey, Edna, come here. I'm like, "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me?" And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I can't believe you hid this from me." She's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "The fact that you didn't say anything to me was really, really disappointing." She's again, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, this. And I had a mirror, and I said, "Why didn't you tell me about this?" At the time, my hair had grown out a little bit, and it was the first signs of the baldness that was starting. And I'm like, "Why didn't you tell me about?" I was walking around with this big old bald spot in the back. Of course, she punched me, and rightfully so. Now I just, I don't worry about, I'm not somebody that really cares much, at least for those first few years of losing my hair. I didn't really care a whole lot about it. I figured it's what God gave me, and just be positive and don't worry about it. I have noticed now in my late 40s, as I'm losing more and more of my hair, and it's becoming more of a halo, that it's bothering me more, which is surprising. I'm at the point now that I really wish my hair would just turn gray, 100%, because it wouldn't be as noticeable. But when you have darker hair and are bald on top, it's a little more poignant to everybody that sees you. And again, you don't see it when you're just looking in the mirror. It takes pictures and or another mirror to actually realize how ridiculous you may look. And so, but it never bothered me growing up. The going bald, I knew it was going to happen. I accepted it early on. I wasn't going to have surgery or anything to keep myself looking younger. I know that's a choice that a lot of people make, and good for you. But I never cared, but I do find myself caring a lot more as I continue to age. Oh my gosh. Hopefully this extra riding today will get rid of some of those poor choices I made this weekend. I set a goal to be down to 300 pounds by this Wednesday, the 20th, so just a couple days out. And this morning when I weighed in, I was still 310 pounds. And so I have 10 pounds to go in the next 2 days. And so I'm going to do a little extra. I'm going to try to do a little extra to meet that goal. 3 days a week, I've said from the beginning, is not going to be enough of riding. And so I intend to do something more. I'll probably ride tomorrow morning. I may end up streaming that, even though that's not on my normal schedule, because I find that streaming makes the ride easier. When I don't do this, for whatever reason, it's harder. It's a more difficult thing for me to do. And so, oh man. So it's just more difficult for me to ride without streaming. Usually I can only push about 30 minutes. The interaction helps me, which is silly to most people, but it's worked for me. So I'll probably end up streaming tomorrow morning. And I'll hopefully remember to turn the heat down so it's not so flippin' hot in here. That's probably the biggest struggle I have today right now is just the heat. It's 65 degrees, and that extra 5 degrees is making it a bit more challenging. Now I also, depending on weather, so probably my plan for the next 2 days is just stick to not eating too much. Tonight's my late night at work, so tomorrow morning I'll probably ride again. You'll probably see that. And then when I get home from work, I'll probably go on a hike as long as the weather permits. As long as it's not raining out, I'll probably go on a hike and knock out at least 2 to 4 miles. Let's see, I'll get home around just after 6, so I'll probably do the short loop, which I call David's Lasso, after, you know, in memory of my son. And so I'll probably do David's Lasso. And hey, for anybody that doesn't know that story, my son passed away in 2005. I bought this property in 2010, and I started hiking, and I started using the Map My Fitness app, I think in 2012. And there's one of the routes that you go out and you ride it, you walk it around, and that particular route, when you see it on the Map My Fitness app, it looks like a lasso. I mean, it looks like, you know, a lasso. And so you go out, you do the route, and you come back down, and it just looks like a lasso. And it reminded me, you know, for whatever reason, it brought me to thinking about, well, what would my son be today? What would he look like? What would he be doing? And I imagined him in a little cowboy outfit and a little rope with a lasso. And so I ended up naming the route David's Lasso after that imagined memory of what he might be at that time. And so it's always been named that. My daughters even know it as David's Lasso. If we're going to do a hike, you know, are we going to do David's Lasso, they'll ask. For them, that's the easiest hike anyways, because it's the shortest distance if we're going to do a loop route. And so they never knew him. They were born after David. But I think they feel like he's just as much of a brother to them as if he was here. And so it's good for them too, I think. I hope. I hope it's not damaging for them to know that they had a brother that they never met. But we're a very open family. Both my ex and I are very open in discussing things with our daughters. And so, not always to my agreement. Sometimes my ex likes to bring things up that I don't agree with them. But nevertheless, we have a very open relationship as it relates to discussion about things. So, anyways, I digress again. They like going on that route. We do it at least once a year. When it comes hotter in the summer and the mosquitoes are out, they're not real hip to going out and going out and hiking. They believe they're allergic to mosquitoes. Whether that's true or not, their mother has them convinced of that also. So they don't get outside in these woods too much in the summertime, but in the spring we try to get at least one hike in every year. It's a tradition, and so we'll probably even do that possibly this coming weekend, if not the weekend after that. Again, weather permitting. Oh, we got about 10 minutes left on the ride, so this will be one of the longer rides that we've actually done. Only because I started off earlier today. Felt good waking up. I even laid in bed for a half hour before I actually woke up, and finally just got up to go, and started going through my pre-ride routine of getting the camera set, the green screen, the microphone, the apps, my pre-workout, my in-ride drink, my desk, my mouse, my props. So I was ready to go. Screw it, let's go, man. Why sit around? And a lot of times I'll fiddle around and surf the old interweb before I get riding, because I've got things set up. This morning I thought, well, that's stupid. Just get your ride in. If it's longer than an hour, it's longer than an hour. When I first started, before daylight savings time, I had a decent audience going from around the world, and they got used to when I would be on riding. And as soon as daylight savings happened last week, I lost a large portion of that following globally, and so now I almost feel like it doesn't matter when I ride, because it's a different audience other than a couple of diehards that jump in on here, and they've been here from almost the beginning. I think my first person that ever chimed in, I think his name was William White, I can't remember, I apologize. He died off after a few weeks, but he was here from YouTube, and not sure what happened there, but because the following is less and less over time, it almost doesn't matter when I get on here and ride. I tried to stick to a schedule of explaining, you know, who I was and why I was doing what I was doing for the first half of my hour-long ride, and then the second half having a very specific topic that we talk about. It takes a lot of work to do that, so now you'll find that I just ramble on. We will get back to doing some specific topics eventually, so they'll be pre-planned, researched, possibly have some guests on, and we'll talk about, you know, different things that just make sense for this channel. The original intent of this channel was to just talk about life as an older person. So O stands for old as F. You can fill in the F part. And so the discussion was intended to always be around things that we go through as we get, you know, over 40, let's say, and just continue that discussion about how funny it is, some of the things that happen to us, like losing hair and losing the eyeballs, you know, our sight, and getting a little more deaf, and all those, you know, funny things that we get to live through. And that was the intent of the channel. But as it is, you know, different topics fall into play, and so with every great intention, if you have a channel or a website or that you're discussing things, what you'll find is that your audience will dictate what the conversation will turn into and what the website will ultimately be. So even though it's branded as a older audience channel, because we're talking about a lot of technologies and things like that, it will draw in different audiences that it wasn't originally intended to do. And that's just part of it. It's fine. I've been involved in online marketing for over 20 years now, and so I fully understand it, and this is where you just got to go with the flow sometimes. You know, if the conversation needs to be about technology, then that's what it needs to be about. If the conversation has to be about your balls hanging down to your knees, then that's where it's going to go. You know, the audience will always dictate where you go. I can drive it to whatever I want, but if people have questions or topics they'd like to discuss, hopefully not about your nutsack, that's just where it goes. Sorry that I keep stopping, but holy crap, man. My eyeballs are getting tons of sweat. So the biggest negative when you're riding indoors is that you don't have that wind blowing in your face. And believe it or not, you need it. Now, one way to combat that is to actually have a fan going. I have one directly above my head, which is also, so it's literally like, that is the light of the ceiling fan above my head. I mean, just a couple inches away and I would be hitting it. However, it would make better sense to stay cool to have a fan blowing directly in my face. But the way this is set up, that would actually, you know, be in the way of the camera, and who doesn't want to look at my face? So I don't have a fan in front of me. I could have some off to the side. That would help a bit. Probably will attempt to do that eventually. But Wahoo actually makes a fan that interacts with Zwift, with the game, or whatever you're riding. And so it mimics exactly what you would expect to get from a wind standpoint. And it rides in front of you, and it's attached through, I think, a Bluetooth or ANT connection to the trainer. into the game, and so you're getting more of a realistic experience from the wind standpoint. However, it's fairly expensive, and so it's not something. I'm not saying it's not something I won't buy eventually, but I got to make sure this is something I'm truly going to commit to beyond just this year before I make any other investments into hardware. So it does exist. There are better setups than what I currently have. I'm going to have to do something by the summertime because I still intend to ride in the mornings, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so I'm going to have to do something to get that cool down effect. Holy cow. So one other thing that I need to do is, and I didn't do today, is I need a snot rag. Holy crap. It has taken an hour and 17 minutes of actual riding for my camera to freeze up. It has not done this in the last 2 rides. I am shocked that it did it today. So when it does that, I'm not 100% positive as to why, but I believe it's a software issue. What I did to fix it last time was inside of the Elgato CamLink software, but that's the first time it's happened in 2 rides so far. Which, if it only happens once, that's fine. One thing that you'll find when you go live, you're gonna have issues, and you just gotta live with them. You just gotta expect it's gonna happen and figure out a way to deal with it. Oh man. I did have a lot of stops today. This is the longest ride I've done this year, and so I'm okay with the fact that I had to stop so much, but and hopefully I'll start doing this some more. I mean, hopefully I'll get in some 2-hour rides. That's more realistic to what I do out on the road anyways. About 1.5 hours is about what it takes me to do 20 miles on some of the trails we have, or even the regular road rides. I think the fastest I've ever done my 20-mile routes has been 1 hour and 12 minutes, and that was on a regular road bike, a GT brand, and I've always had the intent of trying to hit 1 hour and 20 miles in 1 hour. Haven't done it yet, and I don't even know if it's possible for me. But 1 hour and 12 minutes is the fastest that I've done that 20-mile route, which is here nearby in Columbiaville, Michigan, where I ride this Southern Links Trailway from Columbiaville to Millington and back, and that's 20 miles. So that's the fastest I've ever done it. My first ride of every year is usually around 1.5 hours or so, and then I usually settle in somewhere at around 1 hour and 16 to 1 hour and 20 minutes, no matter what style bike I'm riding. This year I should probably hit the trail and just hit that regular 1 hour and 20 minutes when I hit that route, just because I'm already in bike shape a little bit, where normally I'm not. Oh man, we're about to hit 8 a.m. So there we go. 1 hour and 20 minute ride as opposed to a 1 hour ride. I'm going to try to finish it up with a little bit of power for the last 10 seconds or so. Woo! There we go, guys. I appreciate anybody that got on today to ride with me and or to support me and cheer me on. Woo! We'll probably see you tomorrow for an hour. I'm really committed to getting down to 300 pounds by Wednesday morning. You know, in order to do that, we're gonna have to put in a little extra work to combat the poor choices that I made this weekend. Woo! Anyways, we'll see you guys tomorrow morning.